Just I'm starting out and I just wanted some tips, advice, and I just wanted to learn more about you because I'm constantly on your page looking at different fights, announcements, and just
Mhm.
just a lot of your different opinions I feel like I agree with. Like you have some pretty strong views, but they're good views, and I really enjoy you.
I
So,
appreciate it. Thanks,
of
man. Yeah.
course, of course. So, you've said that you live in Maastricht.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Prince Carnival and other festivities that take place in Wrighthof.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You did your research.
I told you.
Yeah. So Prince Carnival is like a festival. It's normally like it kind of starts like officially November 11th. But it's not the official carnival. The carnival is normally around February or December. I think the Prince is announced on December, January somewhere. And it's like pretty much 3 days, like three official days: Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. It's like not on a certain date. It's like it's about a certain amount of days until the date is there. So it's always on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but never on a similar date. Um, just people who dresses like crazy, outside the streets, being happy, drinking a lot, eating a lot. That's pretty much it. And I'm honestly not a huge fan of it, man. You won't see me in the clown suit or whatever on the street or whatever. It's just not my thing. But I know many people really love it. And like you said, Vrijthof is like pretty huge. It's like all the well-known cafes, coffee shops, and then I mean coffee shops where you actually get coffee.
Well, I
Not the
saw it was like the hub. It was like the hub of Maastricht.
yes, you
Yeah.
can say that like that. You have like some good restaurants there. And it's just a cool spot to be there. It's one of the most well-known spots in Maastricht.
Yeah.
And Maastricht, just a very old city. It's a beautiful city. I think it's made by the Romans, long time ago, and you still see things from that time. So
I mean, there's like
it's
catacombs, right? Like caves underground or something like
yeah,
that.
there's
Yeah.
definitely caves underground. Yeah, definitely. And it's pretty old. It's pretty beautiful. Many people say when you go on a holiday and you go in the Netherlands, you go to Maastricht because it's all this beautiful, and it's at the border of Belgium. I'm basically at the border of Belgium. So
Yeah, I saw you were like right there. Like throw a rock and you're there.
yeah, exactly.
Um, you talked about your love for hip hop and 90s rock. Tell me a little bit more about who you listen to, what you like. Just I like similar music, so
Oh wow. So I got I've came listen, I'm from 1989. I've been born then. So for me it's like I've heard things in the 90s, but it wasn't really like it was just sticking in your ears, but it's not really like it. So
okay.
I started really listening to music around 1999, 1998.
Okay.
But I've went back there, because I think that era is amazing.
It is.
Uh, for example, rock music. I love Korn. I love Linkin Park. I love Rammstein as well. Slipknot. You got, but at the same time, I love hip hop as well. A great NWA fan. Uh,
Love that.
Eminem. Eminem. Ice Cube on its own, not NWA. Eazy-E. I'm missing so much, but I'm also really love R&B, man. I love TLC, for example. I think they're amazing.
TLC is
Fugees,
no scrubs, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. Okay.
one of those. But so many, man. Tupac, obviously, I love him as well. Biggie, the well known as the Dr. Dre with Snoop Dogg back then.
Oh yeah. The best.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great era of music, and I still listen to it daily. I think I feel also like when you're around like 11, 12, maybe a little bit older, you have certain music, you're like, I don't like that really much. But when you hear it back when you're in your 30s, you're like, oh man, good old times. And
Yeah.
it's not that bad, that music. I have that, for example, with the guy who recently passed away from Fateless, Insomnia. Do you know the song? It's
Uh,
really more
are you talking about
Fateless.
DMX or no?
Yeah, no, I'm not talking. Yeah, DMX is a good example, but I always like DMX. But Fateless, for example, is a guy. He recently passed away. He's an English guy, and I was never into his music. But when I hear it back now, I'm older. I actually really like it. You know what I mean? So that's also a thing. But yeah, DMX crazy man. I mean, Rough Riders Anthem. Who doesn't love it?
I'm
You
gonna have
know.
to
So
look up Fateless after this.
yeah,
Never heard of him.
okay.
Okay. What are some hobbies outside of MMA that you have?
So for you guys, it's soccer, right? We call it football here.
Yes,
So
I know. I know. Ajax is a big thing for you.
yeah, oh yeah, they're actually playing tonight. So yeah, it's I've been pretty much born with the Ajax. How do you say that? With the love for it. You know, my dad is a huge Ajax fan. So, and you can be. There are two ways. You know, you go along with your dad, or you're going against your dad. You know, with football. And for me, it was like I have to see how they play first before I got to make a decision here. But they play the most beautiful football in the country, in my opinion. You know, they come with young players all the time, and I really like the attacking style they have. They don't have the counter style, but the attacking style. I really love that. You know, and I'm pretty much a bigger fan of the team now than my dad is. You know, so it's pretty crazy.
That's how it works
Uh,
out, though.
Sorry.
That's how it works out. I'm the same way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm much more. He's also still pretty. How do you say that? He can get pretty angry if they don't play well, you know. But me as well. Sometimes I have to keep myself a little bit quiet because I get a little bit too crazy. But and it's not close for me. It's like I'm not like all games in the stadium. I'm just watching from home normally, you know, because that's like a 2.5, 3 hour drive to and then back. That's almost 6 hours, you know. And I know for people in the US, 6 hours, it's like a neighborhood, you know, but for me, it's not, you know. So for me, that's a big drive.
No,
If
six
we
hours is pretty far from me. I'll say that.
Okay, okay. Because when I hear sometimes MMA fighters saying like, "Oh, I'm basically fighting in my backyard," it's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, my family lives 8 hours away." I was like, "That's not your backyard, dude. I'm in Germany then." So yeah, but yeah, I just that's that's my favorite team, obviously. I like to play video games as well, but not as much as I did before. You know, I don't have too much time anymore for it. But I sometimes with my friends, and yeah, who doesn't watch Netflix, whatever, you know, just like movies and series. Everybody does. That's pretty
What video
much
games do you play, or did you play when you did?
FIFA. If I'm playing, you
Okay.
know, I really like that. I actually bought God of War Ragnarok like 3 months ago, but I only played for two
My
times because I
friend
didn't
just
have
beat
time.
it. It looks crazy. I don't have a PS5, so
Yeah.
I can't play it, but my
Yeah.
friend was playing it like with me. It's crazy.
It looks sick, and I think it's really really cool. But man, I was like in the game for my feelings like 30 minutes, and I look at the clock, it was 3 hours. So I was like, got to do something else now. I only have played it twice. I should play it more. And I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan. I love the I love the Odyssey, man, the Greece thing. But now it was like the last one was like Valhalla, I think. I also played that one, but I'm looking forward to the new one, which is coming
You know,
this year. So
one of my friends were arguing about it the other day. One of my friends hates the new Assassin's Creed. One of my friends loves the new Assassin's Creed. And they sit there and they were going back and forth like, oh, like, I don't play Assassin's Creed, so I don't know really well. But they both had very strong differing opinions. So I don't know.
and
But
but
oh, sorry, what?
yeah, and EA UFC sometimes, but then I have to be really bored, you know, because I think that's not the best game there is. You
No,
know, I
it's
think since it went to EA, I'm not really happy with it. The last really good one was the THQ one, where also Pride mode was in it. I love that one.
I never even got to play it, but I got to watch that game and it looks amazing. It could compare
Yeah,
like I the new UFC games are so fake. It's so arcadey and just
yeah,
fake. I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
same.
All right. So I want to switch it up to more about like reporting and stuff
Mhm.
and just in terms of that. How long before news is announced do you usually find out about it? Because when I was in the podcast the other day and Strickland versus Imavov broke, Adam Martin said that you told him before the podcast started, and we were already like half an hour in at that point. So how long before the news broke did you know?
Half an hour before the podcast because I was like, I messaged Adam. I was like, dude, we have to talk before the podcast, because normally when we start, we going in and we've pretty much talk a little bit afterwards. So I was like, we have to talk. And he's came like 5 minutes before the podcast, like, yeah, what's up? So I told him, and I was like, we can't bring it because I've heard it from somebody who is legit, and I can't bring it right now. So me was hoping that during the podcast this news would break, and it happened. So that was perfect. I didn't know Strickland got the fight. I didn't know that. I knew that Gastelum was out, that they were searching for somebody, but I was figuring it would have been, in my opinion, maybe it would have been Chris Curtis or somebody, because that fight was earlier booked
Yes.
for another other organization before. So, but it was Strickland. So I think they got a pretty quick done. You know,
Yeah.
Strickland lives
And a
in
good fight.
Vegas, right? Yeah, good fight, definitely light heavyweight now, but yeah, good fight, and it actually doesn't matter. I think either is light heavyweight, it will count, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
if Imavov
it
beats
should
him,
count towards the middleweight, right?
yeah.
I hate if like, if a situation like this happens and it doesn't count towards middleweight, because really the only reason it happened is because of the short notice nature.
Mhm.
But so no, I shouldn't ask you that. Sorry, I shouldn't ask that. Why didn't you break it if you knew? Because is it because you knew the person who was the original source and you wanted to give them like the credit, or like what is the situation? Because how do you know like such breaking news like that and not break it?
I talked to some of my of the colleagues as well, you know, in MMA media, you know, and one of those people told me, you know, and he's also from the media, so it's pretty much for me, it's his story when he tells me, you know,
Yes.
and then it's like I can't do anything with it anymore unless I knew who Imavov was fighting. Then it was different, you know.
Yeah.
So he told me, I was like, oh damn. I was like, why you don't break it? He's like, I gotta wait for my bosses to be okay with it to break it, you know, and that's how it works, you know. So I have to stay quiet at that moment of time, you know. So yeah, that's why I didn't break it. Listen, if
Oh, it
it's my
makes
own,
sense. It makes sense.
yeah,
I just wanted to know. It
no
just
problem.
interests me.
Mhm.
It's like it's like a respect thing in a way, but it's also
Well,
like
that's it. You
yeah.
know, if somebody tells me something, and it's like also a media member who's behind a certain thing, and it's like kind of risky what they're doing, you know, because if I'm not trustworthy and
You
they're
could go
telling me,
report it and take their
yeah,
news. Yeah.
exactly, but I'm not like that. So
Oh, clearly.
it's okay.
Clearly. All right. When do you know the right time to break your news if you're the source reporting it? Do you just break it as soon as you find out, or do you want to wait for a specific time?
That's actually no. I break it. Listen, man. I always have in the back of my mind. If I know it, there are more people to know it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So, for me, it's like you need both sides from the fight who are fighting. You know. So if you're like, for example, you have a fight that you heard about and you got told by one side, or you got told by whoever, doesn't matter, but you need both sides, you know. I don't care if it's a manager who confirms it to me, the fighter, you need one side either way. And that's why it's sometimes difficult, you know, when you have like a fight to break and you have one side who says like, I have confirmed and I've signed the contract, but the other side says I haven't signed a contract, or either doesn't reply to your message, then you can't break the fight. You can break it, but it's not ethical. And the other side is you can be effed if, for example, he didn't sign it. You know what I mean? So because you got it for both sides, but still, if you hear it's in the works, that means it's verbally agreed, and you normally get the contract quick. But that's why I'm always very hesitant with with sometimes with breaking stuff. For example, I get like I have like 15 DMs in my DMs for people who are like, why haven't you posted font against Yanes yet, for example. It's really simple, you know, because it's not signed yet, at
Okay.
least not from one side, and I want to wait for that, you know.
I
And
saw on your list it's in red still, which
yeah,
means it's agreed upon by one fighter, or one fighter
actually,
confirmed it.
both agreed on it, but it's just not
But
signed yet. I'm just
okay.
waiting for that, and but it's going to happen for sure, you know,
Okay. Yeah,
because both guys already spoke about it, I think. So yeah.
all right. Um, you talked a little bit about this before, and that you only miss fights if you need to. like if you really need to, and that like the time thing actually helps you because the lateness of the fights means you're usually not busy at those hours. But what percentage of fights would you say that you do watch on like a yearly basis, let's say?
Is that a percentage of fights in the UFC
UFC,
yeah,
like just
yeah.
strictly UFC.
Um, Honestly, I watch them all, dude. But
Yeah,
sometimes I cannot like when if it's an early start time. Sometimes it's difficult, because I have other things I have to do as well. For example, now it's different because I freelance for Eurosport, right? And I
yeah.
watch the events and I write about it. So I don't miss anything. But back then, when I wasn't at Eurosport, I didn't do this this wasn't my job, and I was a mailman, And when you
Yes.
had a Korea card, for example, I remember the Korea card with Frankie Edgar against Chan Sung Jung, Korean Zombie, a few years ago. That was like in the morning at 11 a.m. And that's when I had to work, so I couldn't watch that. I had to watch it back afterward. And there's nothing worse than watching it back when you know it's when
Like,
it's
you know what
going on.
happens? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And you want to know, and the thing was back then I also did like a results page on my former MMA DNA.
Mhm.
So I was like during my mail round for people in the street, I was watching, oh, fight is over, result, this and that, safe. And I was doing that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And before, when I would wanted to break a fight and I got confirmation for a second fight, when I was on my bicycle, I said it on the street side. I'm gonna sit somewhere and I'm gonna type that in on Twitter. You know that's crazy, but that's different now.
What percentage of your following would you say is American and like from the Netherlands?
I think my following is honestly bigger in the US or international than the Netherlands. Because the Netherlands is still very kickbox minded.
Yeah.
Glory kickboxing, that kind of stuff, and
I mean,
fusion.
Sammy Schilt, what's it? There's a bunch of them. Like I
Yeah,
forgot. Was Rico? Is Rico from Netherlands?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's a
he's pretty
couple.
big here.
Yeah.
He's pretty big here. Rico is now like, um, for example, if Bas Rutten would walk here in the street, he can quietly walk in the street. If Rico Verhoeven walks, he gets asked for autographs and for pictures. That's because kickboxing pretty big. But for example, the older guys like Peter Arts, Remy Bonjasky, Sammy Schild, like you said, Ernesto Hoost, they didn't have that stardom here in the Netherlands, because back then it just wasn't even that big, only with the kickboxing fans. And the Netherlands still has a kind of a feeling for wrestling. You know what I mean? So when it hits the ground, they're like, yeah, what? Stand them
Yeah,
up,
like
pretty
what's
much.
happening? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's still a thing. But we now have like LFL, Cage Warriors, Lowlands, which is for the Netherlands and for Belgium, which is good, for the development of MMA here. And because I think there are talented guys in here, but I think with ground game they're still a lot of behind. If you look at US, Russia, Brazil, big difference. But to go back on your topic, your question, yeah, I think I have more followers internationally because even I have also like do a podcast in the Netherlands as well. With Dennis, which is also the lead at Eurosport, and with Gilbert Eiffel, former UFC fighter as well. Um, since then, I got more following in the Netherlands than I had before. Because you see my tweets is in English. You know what I mean? Because listen, man, I can't be like a Brazilian and just doing Portuguese,
On
like or
Instagram,
just
you
doing
do
it.
post in both.
Yeah,
So
I tell you why. I'll tell you why. So when I started this thing on Instagram, I was with another website back then, and I actually only did like fight announcement, this guy against this guy, this event, that weight class, done. And then
right.
the guy out there said like, "Can you do some more info?" I was like, "Yeah, for sure." At first, I did just the Dutch things, but many more people is like, What's Jap datum?" That's like date of birth, you know. And I wanted to change it, but it's a lot to change the whole time. You know what I mean? Then I just want to post it, and I have to post it on Twitter as well. Then sometimes I have to write an article about it. So I'm pretty busy. But if I'm really bored, I will probably change it and fully English. It's better. But it started as Dutch, and it went to how do you say that? Like two languages
Yeah,
mixed.
bilingual. Bilingual.
Bilingual,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's what it went. So, but I mean, the how do you say that? You can follow it. You know what I mean? It's not like it's written in Hebrew or in Arabic that you can't read it. You know what I mean? That you really have to know the language. But
No, when
I,
I was watching a clip of your podcast, the Dutch podcast with Gilbert
Mhm.
Eibel, and I mean, not most, but there was definitely a couple words that are easily made out, like easily made out. Like I could kind of get the gist of what you guys were talking about, but not like, I didn't fully understand really, but I
uh,
definitely understood a couple things. Like it's definitely different, but not as different as I thought it would be.
yeah. Some words. Listen, and you got to see for like it's an MMA podcast, so and a lot of words will be like transferred from English to Dutch as well. For example, triangle choke. We just call it a triangle choke. We're not gonna say driehoeksverwerking, which would have been in Dutch. That doesn't make sense, you know. So I try to keep the certain terms in because otherwise it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
And we should say actually instead of bantamweight, we should say bantamgewicht, but I
Okay.
prefer to say bantamweight. But if I write on the side, I say bantamgewicht because it's in Dutch. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, but that's pretty much yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So what you said, like the whole thing about the ground game and how
Yeah.
like once it hits the ground, everyone's just confused. I know you said you started watching MMA because you went to the store and you bought the DVDs of BJ Penn versus GSP, and then you and your dad were interested in what happened next, and you kept going with GSP and just all the events and everything. But is that what made you more accustomed to watching like people fight on the ground, or like what was your introduction to watching people grapple that really made you interested in that?
Yeah, the thing is actually like I said, kickboxing is huge in the Netherlands. I started with kickboxing, watching kickboxing, and on that kickbox DVD was an MMA fight. I watched that with Frank Shamrock, Elvis Sinisic. And back then, like you said, the story of the DVD was BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, UFC 63. After the fight, GSP comes
Yeah.
like, I'm not impressed with your performance. And I bought 65 after that, and so on and so on. So, but I really was intrigued, of course, with the stand-up game. You know, you had the gloves, which were like in boxing and kickboxing, it's like more padded, and this is like a grappling glove. You know what I mean? So so I was intrigued with that as well. And at a certain moment, I remember I only watched the finishes because I was like 3 times 5 minutes. I was used to 3 times 3 minutes with kickboxing. That's a long time, you know. But as more as you're gonna watch, and if it's a good fight, 5 minutes is nothing, you know,
Yeah.
to watch, you
No.
know, and 50 minutes also nothing if it's a good fight. So down the line, I got more understanding of the ground game. And there was also like back then THQ, you had that UFC on the PlayStation back then, you know. So and also there they showed you the ground game, the grappling, and I was really like intrigued as well with Eddie Bravo, who back then did the scoring for UFC, not the official scoring, but just like an extra commentator. He gave a
Yes, yes, yes. Like,
scorecast. Yeah, so I bought his books back then, like the Twister and the Rubber Guard and that kind of stuff.
okay.
And I checked that as well. So I got more intrigued with the ground game, and you develop more of an understanding for a ground game. You know what I mean? And for me, it's now like I don't mind if the fight is on the ground. You know, it's intriguing, and I'm looking sometimes like you see something. For example, the perfect example is when you watch a fight, you see when somebody can get a Van Vloed choke because somebody holds on to somebody's neck, right? And that person goes into side
Side
control.
control. Yep.
But they keep holding on. And it's like, there's the Van Vloed choke. You saw that
Yep.
with the Granger against Corey McKenna fight. You saw that
Yes.
happening. And she
Yes.
took it also. So you see that now, you know. And back in the day when I would have watched that, I wouldn't have known, you know. But
Yeah.
right now you see that. So that's fun, you know. And that's pretty much, it's intriguing every time, you know, you see ground game, stand-up game. It's just the complete sport is really really cool to me. And that's also the thing with, I started with kickboxing, but kickboxing is really like, I watch it when it's on, but it's not really as intriguing as MMA to me because I miss the ground game now. You know what I mean? It's so stupid, you know. Back then you were not thinking about it, but now I do, you know.
No, it makes sense though, because I mean you're always used to watching people mixing the grappling now. Now when you go back to kickboxing,
Yeah.
it's like throw a trip, throw a trip.
Yeah, it's like it's like when I saw Kit Yamamoto back then fighting in a kickboxing fight, and he was kickboxing with the guy. In a certain moment, the guy just like go back, and he wanted to shoot, and he was like, "Oh no, it's kickboxing, not MMA."
You could tell in what was it, DJ versus Rod Tang, he wanted to shoot in that first round like
Yeah,
20 different times. He was trying to get away so many times. He was like awkwardly clinching him because he was just like trying to put his weight on him and knew he couldn't. It was so funny. That was a good one. I watched that again the other day. And I'll proudly say what got me into UFC was UFC 2, the video game. I was at a friend's house. We were playing UFC 2, the game. And we were just playing. I got interested in a couple of the names or whatever. Looked up a couple, like whatever the upcoming event was, and it was Robbie Lawler versus RDA. And I didn't watch it. I didn't anything. I just kept up with the results. And for about 3-4 cards, I just kept up with the results until about Gaethje Poirier was the first card I watched live, and that's what got me hooked onto MMA.
awesome.
Yep,
Yeah,
that
awesome.
was
Yeah.
that's my MMA story. And then I got into jujitsu after getting into like MMA. So yeah,
And how long you've been doing jiu-jitsu now?
only like only a couple months. I stopped once my school started back because I wanted to focus on that. So I,
Yeah,
I
okay, I
haven't been
understand.
I haven't been for a bit. It's okay. Uh, no, my bad. How long did it take for you to build the connections you have today?
Oh, yeah, it came out of itself at a certain moment, you know. It's like you get noticed on Twitter, you know, and I always credit the right people, you know what I mean? I always make sure that if I credit somebody, I credit the right person, you know, and people see that as well, and they respect that. So they give you the respect back. And with fighters or managers, it's like if they like what you're doing, they're contacting you. I don't think I ever contacted the manager from out of myself, maybe once because I needed to know something. But it's like this: if the management or the fighters don't want to have a connection with you, won't get a connection. You know what I mean? So it's on their part pretty much, and obviously it's on my part to keep the connection good. You know,
Yeah.
that's not a big problem at all because I'm just honest, and I'm not like I'm not gonna how do you say that, badmouth fighters online. You know, some people do that. I don't do that because it's stupid. You know, also when people listen, I always give my picks on the podcast, what I do with Adam. You
Yeah.
know, but I will never, when somebody asks me on Twitter, for example, if they're going to ask me, who do you pick in this fight? I say, do you pick Strickland or do you pick Imavov? I'm going to say I pick Strickland because this and that, because Imavov reads that or somebody from his management reads that. They're like, dude, okay, you should be like neutral. And I am neutral, you know,
Yeah.
also in my picks, I'm neutral, you know, but
You're
it
neutral,
can
but you're also a fan. You have an opinion. It's hard. Yeah,
obviously. So, but I got to keep it a little bit on the down low. Which, if I have a certain opinion, you know, or it's just an opinion I think I can post, but that's something I think in mind because I know for example, there are fighters who get really upset when you pick against them,
yeah.
and you're not even like want them to lose or something. You think the other guy is going to win. You know what I mean? So it's not no disrespect at all. You know.
So most times I'm guessing you talk to the management side of things. Like, do you talk to management a lot or do you talk to fighters directly more?
It depends what management, you know. Sometimes I talk to managements. I've talking like to 4 or 5 managements. I think I have good contact with. Also managements who don't talk to me, and it's not because they don't like me. They either don't see my messages because it goes into the spam folder or whatever, or they're just not interested in talking. You know what I mean? It's either those ones. And if that happens, I try to fight, or sometimes you got lucky, sometimes you don't. Last time I got lucky with one. Can't say the specific which one, but I got lucky with that fighter. He replied to me and he's like, yeah, for sure, dude, I'm fighting this and that guy. It's like, okay, cool. So then you got lucky. But sometimes, like I said before in this interview, sometimes you cannot confirm one name. And I was like, yeah, what to do now? So either I wait and I keep waiting, or I I tell somebody who I like in the community who also breaks
If they
fights.
can get it.
Yeah, maybe you can get it, and if you can get it, keep it. No problem.
Would you say it's more fighters or more? Would you say you break news more often through fighters or through management
Mm,
or
I,
split close? Like,
It's kind of, I would say maybe a little bit more through management, but it's also fighters. It depends. It really depends which management, what fighter. You got contact with some fighters better than with others.
Yeah.
There are some fighters maybe I talk to once in 5 months, and there are a few fighters I talk to pretty much every day. So it depends.
Do you notice that sometimes that like champions will not want to talk to you or no? Or it does it not matter as much? Like, dude, I just want to know if champions will get like, a little bit of an ego in a way, in a sense that like once they get the title, they feel like they don't want to talk to media as much anymore. They only want to talk to like the top of the top, like Ariel Helwani only, or like, do you feel that way, or do you feel like it just depends on the person?
It pretty much depends on the person. And I
Okay.
never felt really much of an ego. There are obviously some guys who talk to you before and then they just totally went silent. But I don't take it personal. You got to see it like this. Like if they're on top, um, then for them it's hard to sometimes to remain on top or to keep on top. And the top reporter Ariel is one of them. So you want to be, most of these guys want to be on the MMA Hour, which I understand that.
Yeah.
You got a lot of support from that. Um, or to be on ESPN, featured on ESPN is big as well for them. So either Brett or something. But you have also guys like a Mike Hack, MMA fighting. He's amazing. Have good contact with him, really good interviewer. James Lynch, one of the best in my opinion. So
All these
there are a
guys.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then James Lynch's not really a fight breaker, but Mike Hack is, for example. He likes to do that, and you, it's not like I don't take it personal if they don't talk to me anymore. But I listen, man. I'd rather have them not talking to me than making up something. I have had it before with somebody who's like, "No, I don't fight. That's totally false." And then it was true. I hate when that happens. Then just
Yeah.
don't say anything. You're not, you don't owe me jack ass. But just then don't say anything. Don't make anything up. You know what I mean?
So you're pretty vocal on your like idea of it's like what a robbery is sometimes. Like you
Yeah.
you definitely aren't afraid to call out a robbery if you see one. What are your thoughts on fixing it? Like if you were the decider and you had the power to change judging and make it however you thought fixed it, what would you do?
I would put three chambers outside of the event center. We put three judges in it, separate from each other, not along with each other. They get a scorecard. They get the sound from the octagon,
But no
but they don't get
commentators.
no commentators, no audience, nothing. Because if you fight, for example, let me give an example: Paddy against Jared Gordon. The crowd was heavily in favor of Paddy. You hear that. So when Paddy lands something, you hear more cheering than when Jared lands something, and the judges hear that as well. Either if you want it to be not non-biased, it's in your head.
Yeah.
Not even on purpose, but it's in your head. And when that is away, you can watch more clear, and also these judges have a screen in front of them. I actually saw a picture because I asked a media member if he could make a picture of it. You got to see it like this. If I look at you now, I look at the fight, right? But here, like this part, they have a like how do you say, a tablet
Yeah.
with actual footage of
Right.
it.
Yeah.
they don't look at that. They keep watching in the cage, and even if they're from the wrong side, you know what I mean. So doesn't make
They
sense.
don't use the tablet to their advantage the way they're supposed
Yeah,
to. Like if they're on a bad angle, what you're supposed to do is look down
yeah,
at the
they're like,
tablet and get the good angle. They're like turning their
yeah.
head and yeah. You know, it's very well known that cage side view is not the best view in terms of
Mhm.
judging. You got to look at the screen and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So not a lot of time left on the recording, but I still do want to talk to you after the recording is over.
No problem.
So just this will probably be the one of the last two questions. What was up with the lack of promotion for Road to the UFC in the US? I understand, like, don't get me wrong. I really do understand that it was made to get the Chinese audience more involved and the Asia market. Like, I get it. That's a huge thing for them. But it didn't mean they had to exclude us. Like I had no clue what was, I tried to follow it and couldn't because I had no clue what was going on. I genuinely couldn't.
It was on Fight Pass for us over here, so we could watch. It was on really weird times, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched it, but the thing is, like, this was supposed the finals were supposed to happen in Korea, right? So still for the Asian market, but now it's not in Korea, the card, so they got to do it here.
At the
Oh,
Apex.
yeah, and those times, dude, it's like local time. Let's see, that's I know Eastern time. The prelims start at 10 p.m. and the main card starts at 1 a.m.
1 a.m.
Eastern time.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
and that's normally normal time for me. But right now,
I told my friends the other day, they were like, "You're serious?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah."
and now over here
It's
it's
so
like
funny
four.
now. Now that I'm like having an MMA page and all this stuff, my friends think I'm like some kind of guru. They come to me with like all these questions and like all I like it. I enjoy it. I can't lie. But yeah, no. So all right. So you've talked about how the UFC can see certain fighters as replaceable and like disposable, how they can
Mhm.
just get rid of them and then replace them with a guy that wins on the contender series, basically.
Yeah,
In your experience, what does a fighter have to do in order to break out of that mold and become someone that's valuable to the UFC?
it's difficult, man, because
Yeah.
I mean, some fighters just have it from their own. Sean O'Malley tracks certain
Paddy Pimblett.
Paddy. They
Yeah.
have that, but some
Yeah.
don't. And that's difficult. That's for each to their own, I think. But that's a problem with the company has a lot of influence. You know what I mean? It's like a fighter can be difficult, but then they're like, okay, bye, we take the other one. And you can go to Bellator, you can go to PFL. And PFL is maybe the best option. You can win $1 million by winning a tournament. For a lot of guys would be a good option. But for Bellator, I don't know, man. I think the top guys get pretty decent amount of money. But if you're not a top guy, it's difficult, And these days, you got to sell yourself. I'm not a big fan of it. I think you should just fight hard, and I think the promotion should try to sell you. But the
It's not that
UFC is,
easy anymore.
I
Yeah.
know the UFC sells the fighters who already sell themselves. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah,
The text I sent my friend before was Rob Wilkinson was paid $12K to get beat up by Adesanya, but paid $1 million to beat up Omari Akhmedov.
Mm.
I mean, it's crazy if you put it like that. I mean,
yeah,
the difference in competition between Israel and Omari Akhmedov is there's definitely a decent difference in level of competition there. And he was paid, I mean, 990,000 more dollars to fight him.
yeah. But
That's absurd.
how crazy is it that Rob Wilkinson won the PFL title, right?
I mean, he looks like a new fighter though. He
Yeah,
really does look good. I mean, I thought Omari was gonna win that. I bet on Omari to beat Silveira. Was it Josh Silveira in
yeah.
in the semifinal?
Mhm.
And I won decent money because he was the underdog. And then I bet on Omari again, thinking he might pull it off against Wilkinson. And Jesus, he just got completely neutralized.
Yeah.